Please rise. I'm going to call me to order. Please rise for pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For a moment of silence, please.
Remember the little third grade child in Tonganoxie that got it? Didn't survive a car accident.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. Okay. Welcome everybody watching that's here or will be watching. If I could ask for everyone to put their phones on silent or vibrate, please. We'll start with roll call. Today I'll be starting. I'm here. Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Stephen.
Here.
Commissioner Culberson.
Here.
Commissioner Cause.
Here.
Public comment. I don't believe there was any, Mark. Was there? You have anything for the good of the group, Mark?
Commissioners, before we shut down our meetings for COVID, you'd asked that we try to set up a meeting with the Mid-America Regional Council, and we are now back, obviously, in full swing with meetings, as are they, and I've invited them out, and they're here today. We have representatives from Mid-America Regional Council to kind of discuss what they're doing and to allow you opportunity to also ask them some questions.
Great. Welcome.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. It's a delight to be here. I'm David Warm. I'm the Executive Director of the Mid-America Regional Council, and I'm here today with Ron Ackelpool, who is our Director of Transportation and Environment. And we're pleased that you've invited us here to bring you up to speed on a few things. We're going to kind of hone in a lot on transportation today, but I might, before I get there, just say a few words for the members of the community who are here who may not be familiar with Mid-America Regional Council. We are an association of all the local governments in metropolitan Kansas City, and we represent 9 county area, including Leavenworth County and 3 other counties in Kansas and 5 in Missouri. And we bring together all the cities, counties, and many other civic partners to help us achieve together what assists us each individually. We are governed, as you know, by a board of elected leaders appointed by their representative jurisdictions. And we've been very grateful for Commissioner Smith's active participation on our board. Commissioner Culberson was there last month, I think it was, and we very much appreciate their active involvement. Everything we do at MARC is fueled and supported by the local governments and our other civic partners that help sort of inform and prioritize and as I said, fuel the work that we do. And we get great participation from Mark and the entire professional staff here on all of the areas where we need that kind of active involvement, particularly in transportation and infrastructure. We work in lots of different policy and functional areas, transportation and environment, but we also work heavily in emergency services. We work a lot in social and community services and local government services, and I'm happy to talk about any or all of that. But given your time today and the rest of your agenda items, we're going to focus mostly on transportation items. I will share with you a couple of recent priorities in some other areas. One, for instance, we are engaging in a very broad effort to try to develop a strategy for ensuring digital access throughout the metropolitan area in ways that to help us provide both the technical as well as other support systems that allow for everybody to have really high-quality broadband access. And the needs in different parts of the region vary. They're very different in the middle of Kansas City than they are here. And we are going through an exhaustive process trying to understand the technical needs as well as the other sort of infrastructure and community needs that are necessary to achieve that outcome. That process is underway, and we've got some meetings scheduled to talk to the general public. I think there's one on September 13th that will be focused on Leavenworth and Wyandotte County. So if you have some more interest in that, I'm happy to get you more information on that. And our hope is a little later this fall, we will come out with a very coherent and complete framework for how we can better provide digital access in every corner of our metropolitan area so that local governments, our community partners, or MARC can compete more effectively for federal money or federal money being administered by the state governments and help make sure that the needs here are taken into account as they allocate those resources. The other thing we've been working really hard on the last number of years, it's actually a continual process, is keeping the technical equipment that glues together the regional 911 system relevant and current and up to speed. And so we go through a continual process of upgrading the answer points throughout all of the metropolitan area for the 911 system. And this year we will have completed the upgrade for all of the answer points in Leavenworth County, including those that the county itself operates, as well as the city of Leavenworth and Fort Leavenworth. I think 8 out of the 10 workstations have been completed in 2022, and the other 2 are scheduled to occur at the fort after they complete some renovations, as I understand it. So that work is underway and is a part of a continual process of keeping the equipment reliable as well as in step with the latest technology. I know you have a particular interest and priority focus right now on some transportation infrastructure. You're undergoing a transportation planning process, and we really applaud that and look forward to participating and supporting it with any resources that we can provide. We have a lot of modeling resources or data or other sort of insights that may be useful, and we will make ourselves available to you and your team as you go through that process. But I'm going to ask Ron Ackelpohl to talk about some of the key transportation strategies, interests, and priorities, and then we'll be available to answer your questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. It's great to be here with you this morning. I'll just talk a little bit more about MARC's role in transportation. We are designated as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the bi-state Kansas City area, and that's significant because it means that we're the organization that really facilitates priority setting among city governments, county governments, state departments of transportation, public transit providers around the region, to focus on really all aspects of the surface transportation system in the Kansas City area. So highways, bridges, public transportation, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, freight transportation. So we have a pretty broad portfolio on transportation planning. We also have a role in priority setting for a number of federal programs that have recently been either created or reauthorized under the bipartisan infrastructure law that's just recently been passed. All of the work that we do is really guided by our board of directors, but also a set of committees that report to our board through our Total Transportation Policy Committee. We have a lot of committees at MARC, frankly, that work on different elements of the transportation system and transportation planning process. I will say that Leavenworth County and Leavenworth jurisdictions have been really strong participants in all of those planning processes. And just as of this week, we've gotten updated rosters from you for county appointments on those committees, and so appreciate that. So some of the work that we focus on is really guided by the priorities and the policy framework that we established through a metropolitan transportation plan called Connected KC 2050. That plan was adopted by our board back in the summer of 2020. We're going to be initiating a process to update that plan early next year, and it'll be due in the summer of 2025. And to echo David's comment about the Priorities for Progress process that you all have initiated, that we appreciate that a lot. It's very helpful when counties work with their member local governments to establish priorities countywide. It really helps with advocating for your priorities in the regional planning process and advocating for those with the state, with KDOT. And it'll frankly help us in our work to update the metropolitan plan for the region. We also do make program allocations for a number of federal funds, mainly through the Federal Highway Administration. There's a program called the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. There's an element of that called the Transportation Alternatives Program. It's a set aside of the Block Grant Program. And we're in the process right now of reviewing applications for those projects that were submitted earlier in the year for funding in 2025 and 2026. And this is a process that we go through every other year. So in 2024, we'll be doing another call for projects for those programs. And with the work you're doing with the Priorities for Progress program, you'll be very well positioned for that call for projects. We also manage a planning program to provide challenge grants, resources for local governments to do planning around the transportation systems in their individual jurisdictions or in partnership with others. That program is called Planning Sustainable Places. It's intended to help look at how transportation investments relate to other elements of public infrastructure, whether that's housing or zoning and development, whether that's environment. It's a program that has been used by a number of local governments over the years. The city of Basel recently was awarded a grant for that for their active transportation master plan, and the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority used that several years ago to develop a framework for public transportation investments in the county. I bring that up because we have gone through the process to do a call for projects for that program, but we did not receive enough applications on the Kansas side to fully award that program. So we'll be doing a supplemental call for planning projects for that program in the next month or so to be able to use all of the funding that we program for Kansas. In terms of the transportation priorities that we've established in the Connected KC 2050 plan, we're very focused on safety of the transportation system. We're very focused on the way that the transportation system serves economic development and redevelopment throughout the region. We're very focused on the impact of the transportation system on the environment and on our ability to be sustainable in a resilient region over time. And we're also very focused on expanding the choices that people have in the region for how they get around, whether it's driving and making sure that the highway system is functioning efficiently, but also providing additional investments in public transportation, in biking and walking in the region, and in serving ports and freight movement throughout the region. And so I'll just kind of conclude with kind of overview of what we're working on right now that we really appreciate your involvement in, and really open the floor for questions. I think we've developed a really good relationship with the county, with the member cities in Leavenworth County, and look forward to continuing that into the future. And with that, I know you've got some specific questions for us, so I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Mike. Did you have something?
Yeah, I do. On Apex, the battery plant in DeSoto, is your organization specifically looking into that as far as the potential expansion of transportation needs, transit needs, getting people from Topeka over there, Lawrence over there, Kansas City over there? What is your organization doing towards that? We had a really good presentation on that project at our board meeting this last month. I will say that we are working with KDOT and the county on beginning to program some of the funding for some of the roadway improvements that are going to be needed for that project. We are interested in conversations about providing better transit access and job access for the site, but those are really in the very early stages. And so I would say Mark does not really have a lead role in developing the transportation plans for that project, but we stand ready to support the county and DeSoto and the state as they're deploying that.
And I don't know if you're aware of this, but a little piece of DeSoto is actually in Leavenworth County, down by the golf course. But we have some infrastructure especially on Golden Road. We have some bridges, and they're going to be heavily impacted. And the funding potential, I'm hopeful that Mark will be looking at that.
We will be happy to look at that. I also would mention we'd be happy to support your efforts and others as you may pursue any of the discretionary funds through the bipartisan infrastructure. There are a number of programs that are not specifically awarded through MARC or through KDOT, but decisions are made in Washington, D.C. by the U.S. Department of Transportation. And we've got a fairly good track record of helping with some of those kinds of applications.
Is that through letters of support and that kind of thing, or?
Yes, it can be letters of support, can be technical support for applications. We've submitted our own and have been successful for some of those grants as well. So I think we'd be open for conversations about that.
Okay. Well, I know the man right behind you is the guy that's going to do a lot of that, but I think that was something I was interested in. Will that also change this Connect 2050 since this has come in? Will they be reviewing that document?
Well, yes. I think that there are some improvements that KDOT had identified on K10 that are going to that will help support that development. And that announcement was about the K10 projects was made before the announcement about the Panasonic plant was. We are working with them right now to amend the transportation plan to include those new projects in it, and we will continue that process. As we do our update, this will play into updated forecasts that we make about population growth and employment in the region. That is a kind of a basis for a lot of the other transportation planning.
Okay. Well, that's a real concern for southern Leavenworth County because that's going to impact us quite a bit.
Commissioners?
Ron, you'd mentioned there wasn't enough applications from Kansas side
For that Planning Sustainable
Right.
Places program, yes.
Okay. Does Tonganoxie have anybody that sits on any of your committees?
I don't believe that we've got representatives from Tonganoxie on those committees directly. I mean, the way our committees are structured, we oftentimes will have a small city seat for the county that's appointed by a collection of mayors, in some cases the county commission. And so I don't know that Tonganoxie is represented.
I don't believe they are. They probably should be. So. And then when you're talking about what you were talking about, infrastructure for businesses and all that, I mean, we'd have to have a design ready to submit for an application, correct? We'd have to do the design work and have a project on the shelf ready to go for application.
It depends. If we're talking about the Planning Sustainable Places program, that is a planning program, and so it doesn't require projects to be developed. It helps develop those projects. There are some federal programs that do support planning and engineering costs. One of them is the RAISE program. There were projects in the Kansas City area that were recently announced through that program. Two of them were planning projects, and two of them were kind of infrastructure projects. All of them were in the Missouri side of the region. But that's one program that does specifically allow dollars for planning and project development. I believe that's also the case for a program called Infra and another program called Mega. Those are all discretionary programs that the USDOT administers.
So it'd have to be the county or any government entity apply for that.
Generally, yes.
It wouldn't be like a business that was going to come to our county and say, hey, we're going to impact the county like this.
They generally need a local government sponsor.
Local government would have to sponsor.
And occasionally, if we have multiple local governments, then sometimes we'll be the sponsor and supported by matching dollars or other priorities of the implementing agency.
Get support from Johnson County and Leavenworth County.
That would be a powerful idea. Commissioner Smith, one of the things that we do all the time, we'd be happy to do with your team or a subset of the commission, would be to identify some of your key priority needs or things that you see coming down the horizon and just talk through what the options are, what you need to position it for funding, whether you do it directly in competition at the federal level or whether you do it through one of the processes that we manage. And we advise and coach and help you put your best foot forward. We do that for a lot of local governments. We'd be happy to do that.
Would that be with you specifically, or with a committee, or?
It'd probably be helpful to start with a staff-to-staff kind of conversation, or a staff to a commission conversation. But it really depends on where the conversation leads about how involved we would get committees in those discussions.
Okay. Well, I think some of us and our director the gentleman behind you is the man that's going to be centering on a lot of writing these grants and things, and a couple members of the commission. But I think that's a really good idea. One question I did have is freight we don't have any rail hubs in Leavenworth County, and this county used to be rail hubs everywhere. And we've talked about if we develop a new industrial park, and we have our economic development people are out here, if we do develop another industrial park at some point in the future of having a railhead at that location, is there some funding through MARC that can benefit or help us with that type of a project?
Generally, the funding that we have available is pretty limited to public infrastructure, so generally doesn't go to rail projects. But the state of Kansas has funding, and there are programs that are administered under the USDOT for projects like that. That's not to say that this idea isn't something that could be pursued through one of the planning grants I talked about earlier, but the infrastructure dollars that we actually administer through the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program usually are limited to public rights of way and not to a private rail facility or inside the gate of an intermodal type facility.
Okay, so this could be a conversation that when we have this meeting we could further talk.
Jeff, you want to say something about Gateway, please?
Sure. Actually, I had a couple things.
Okay.
First off, I wanted to thank you guys for your role in our 911 system. I don't think a lot of people know how much MARC actually saves Leavenworth County taxpayers. There's a lot of things that you guys have done over the years, from organizing the PSAPs all the way down to your field staff actually going out and doing work in Leavenworth County that we would have had to contract out for. That would have cost the taxpayers money, so I appreciate the work you guys have done with the 911 system. Two, the membership fee that we pay, the 911 work you guys have done alone more than pays for our membership fee to MARC. We opted out of the MARC membership years ago, and that cost us our 435 access. So being a member of MARC is very beneficial for a lot of different reasons. Also, I know we have 2 board positions available right now from people leaving the county that we're working on getting those filled with you guys. And then also I want to bring up the 152 project. We've been talking to most of the stakeholders on the Kansas side. Now I'm reaching out to the Missouri side, and I've talked to Ron before about it and getting that part of the 2050 plan and then seeing how much we can bump that up. I'm meeting with Mayor Parkville next week and some more stakeholders on the Missouri side to talk about that. The end result of that would be, of course, to save taxpayers money. The end goal, not only making transportation a lot faster for people. You know, you could be in Lansing, get to the airport in 6 minutes, but the end result is the economic development would, of course, lower people's taxes. And then finally, I was going to ask you about the format and the criteria MARC has in the scoring process for some of your grants. Kind of handicaps counties over cities. I think Doug and Bill know more about what I'm talking about. They could explain that better. But if we could talk about that maybe down the road or have a meeting about that. Do you know what I'm talking about, where the grant process for counties kind of handicaps counties over cities applying and being approved for grants, like in the scoring matrix? Bill, you know what I'm talking about? Could you kind of...
I'd be happy to talk offline about that. We do work with our evaluation and our scoring processes for these programs. I will say that the scores themselves are always provided as points of information for our committees to decide. They don't make the decision about which projects are funded or not, but we are always looking at ways to improve the evaluation of projects to make them more fair across the board, and also to align them with the goals and objectives of the regional transportation plan.
And I think I got a meeting set up with you guys in a week or two, so we'll go over that then. Appreciate it.
Commissioner, I might just add, Ron and I were talking on the way up here that the new bridge concept at 152 might be a good subject for one of the planning grants. It's the kind of thing that would benefit not only from a sort of transportation study, but also from a study of how it would enable the county, both on the Missouri and Kansas side, to achieve other objectives you have for the orderly growth and development of the county. And so that's the kind of thing that the Planning Sustainable Places program is intended to do. It's not a large dollar grant typically, but it is enough to help you formalize what the strategy and rationale and impact is of a project like that and move your planning along. And so we'd be happy to visit with you or your team about whether that's something you want to prioritize.
That sounds great. Yep.
On that same vein, there's these mega project grants through ARPA, and we talked about, and maybe we missed the opportunity, but in the future when there's these mega projects and we need to be moved to the top of the line, any advice on being able to have that ready? Like Commissioner Smith said, sometimes you have things ready to go on the shelf, but we probably need both the senators in both states on our side, and we need to have everything lined up exactly right. But we certainly need Mark on board as well. So what would your advice be for moving ahead on that?
Well, I do think, I think we've talked about it a few times, but I do think your countywide prioritization process that you're going through right now would be just really critical for that. I think that's an absolutely great
Regional transportation set.
Yeah.
That's right. Having a set of priorities that you've developed and certainly ones that you can share with the cities in the county as well will be really important in working with us, working with KDOT, working with Congress on bringing additional federal dollars to the county. And I think it also sets a framework for how you might prioritize which projects you might move farther into more of a project development process and get them closer to having plans that are ready to go more quickly.
Jeff, do you have anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Vicki? Commissioners, anybody else have any comments? Gentlemen, we appreciate you taking the time to come see us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
I was
Thank you.
hoping to get to speak with you when we had the group photo taken, but I was pretty busy that day.
Yeah, it was. Thanks for doing that, by the way. That was fun.
Oh, that was fun.
super
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, Mark, do you have anything else? Commissioners, do you have anything on the administrative business?
No.
Okay, let's go to the consent agenda. Is there any item that need to be pulled? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Motion is second. Any discussion? I'll start the voting with aye. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Mr. Culberson?
Aye.
Commissioner Cos?
Aye.
All right, very good. Formal board action. Consider a motion to approve and authorize the chairman to sign a notification of grants approvals revision for 2022. Good morning.
Connie?
Commissioners, you might remember that I was here not too long ago catching up notification of grant awards for 2021 and those ARPA funds. Each year we're required to do a revision of our Older Americans grant. This represents that revision, the result of that revision being that an additional $4,649 were awarded to our Meals on Wheels programs, as well as some of our other programs like telephoning and visiting. And so that just requires a signature to say you're okay with receiving those additional funds and outlines the way that we spent that money in 2022.
Commissioners?
Any
Neither. There's no other concerns. I'll take a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve and authorize the chairman to sign the notification of grants approval revision for 2022 for Council on Aging.
Second?
Motion is second. Any discussion? Very good. I vote aye. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson?
Aye.
Commissioner Cos?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll be back in a couple of weeks with the 2023 grant application.
Thank
We
you.
expect you every other
Thank
week,
you.
honey.
You gonna bring donuts next time?
What's that?
You bring donuts next
Of
time.
course. Meals on Wheels as well.
That's right.
Thank you, Connie. Okay, next item is consider a motion to approve funding to the 21st Century Management LLC spec building incentive loan in the amount of $57,184.43. Good morning.
You can pull another chair up in the middle if you need to.
Hate showing up and move furniture right off the bat. So sorry about that.
All right.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. I'm Chris Donnelly. I'm Chairman of the Leavenworth County Port Authority. I think most of you know me. To my right here is Lisa Hack. She is with Leavenworth County Development Corporation. She is our Executive Director. And then Dan Gutschall, who is our Chair of the Spec Building Program. So we're here to have a brief conversation. We are conscious of your time, so we'll just go through this rapidly. You have a lot of data. You've seen most of it before. Just a real brief overview. The spec building program, we were talking in the lobby, started 4 or 5 years ago. Then as we really thought back, it actually started, and some of you will remember, some of you around that time, almost 22 years ago when we built spec. The actual Port Authority actually built spec buildings in Leavenworth and in Tonganoxie, and I think in Lansing. Yep. And obviously things changed over the 20 years, and the Port Authority had to get out. And so we started 4 or 5 years ago about a conversation about how do we get private sector involved in building spec buildings, commercial and industrial spec buildings, obviously to produce tax base jobs and other things. That's what the Port Authority is for. And more specifically on those are how do we help the cities in and the county in Leavenworth County that doesn't have their own industrial park. Obviously, Leavenworth and Tonganoxie both have their own industrial parks. Years ago, the Port Authority still owns a few lots, but we didn't really have any good opportunities of a publicly owned industrial space in Lansing or Basehor, or in the county somewhere in general. And so we put this together specifically to try to find ways to get private sector involved to do more of the legwork. And this is not intended to put, the spec building program is not intended to put a Hills Pet Science in. That's not what it's for. It's about small business. And 70, as you all know the number, 70% of our economy is based on small business. And it was to put in smaller companies or assist smaller companies and putting up buildings, take some of the risk, move it around a little bit, and then also be self-sustaining. I mean, the whole key to the thing was how do we make it self-sustaining, that if we make an investment, and we clearly know at the Port Authority that the county invests in the Port Authority and then the Port Authority invests. So you're already investing in these programs. We understand that. But this one specifically is designed to eventually get the money back. And the county would get the money back through taxes. That could be in the way of property tax, which is the easiest and clearest to see. Then with jobs and other things, that's going to bring additional tax and sales tax and things like that. So as we looked at those programs, we felt that this program was a good way to put together a stepping stone towards getting additional opportunities in a large economic development space. And this was just really more targeted. So what we're here today for is a specific program building here in Leavenworth. It was the first within the program to take on the project, and we're looking for funding. Obviously, the Port Authority made its investment into Leavenworth County Development Corporation, and you all know that detail. I won't go into that. And this project is now up and running. It's occupied and producing jobs, producing tax revenue. And that specific request is the math is there, and we've tried to present to you a clear picture of how everybody wins and gets their money back over time. Understanding budget, I sat through a Tonganoxie City Council budget meeting for 2 hours last night, and I haven't had that fun. I know you all have, but I encourage everybody to attend. They're a blast. So we understand budget constraints and priorities and things like that, and we're here to have that conversation about this specific project. Another project that is now in the wings, ready, waiting, and then where do we go? How do you want us to go? What do you want us to do for you? And that's what we're here for. So Dan is here. He's spent hours and hours on the program. He put together the current program here in the park in Leavenworth, and he can answer questions on the math. You all understand that, obviously, and staff understands how that works. And so I don't know that we need to regurgitate that. We will if you want us to, but I don't think you need to. We do think that it is number one, that specific program does repay the bill, and think it'll, in the long run, be a really good benefit. While it's not, again, a Hills project, it is a good, solid project for that park. And I would like to ask Lisa to present a little bit. Obviously, there are some confidential things with clients that we are really, we want to make sure we do it right.
Right.
You probably already know about the project itself, but we'll let somebody else tell you the exact names and who they are. But anyways, Lisa, if you'd give us an update a little bit on what's going on in Baser, actually.
Sure, thank you, Commissioners. We've named it Project Brady, and this is a project that came to us initially in December of 2021, so it's been quite a while. This is a client who was looking to purchase a lot at 158th and Pinehurst Drive. They wanted to build a building, and at the time it was going to cost about $987,000. And this was going to be a commercial project that was going to include a couple of businesses, one for the client's business and then also space to rent out for other businesses. So as time has gone on and this client has worked through the process with the city and with the funding part of it, the timeline has been pushed forward, and then it's also cost has increased significantly, as you can understand things going on today. So we've identified the spec building loan program early on as a potential assistance. This kind of releases some of the burden upfront costs that come when you begin these kind of projects. And as costs increase and timelines push forward, that spec building loan program has become increasingly more crucial to this project. And this is one that we're hoping to talk to you about very soon. As far as numbers, we will be getting the application for that program or her loan request here before the next Port Authority meeting, which is on the 20th, I think, of this month. So we'll be able to provide that. And again, as Chris talked about, until we get a few of these under our belt, we're going to need some contributions to make this program work. And most of that's coming, where the Port Authority is providing money, but we're also asking the entities that are going to benefit from the tax increase. And so we're hoping to come before you and hope that you will consider this particular project as well as the 21st Century Management Project and future projects.
So and Dan, I don't know if you want to add anything specific. I sure don't want to leave you out. Please feel free. I mean, you've done all the work on the specific ask this morning. But in the long run, the thought is that we will eventually not need to have an ask. We won't need to come back. In the budget that we presented, part of that was to continue this program specifically on an annual basis for a few years to get enough of these on the ground, and then when they start repaying back, that thing goes away. And that's the math. It's a revolving loan fund. You all deal with that on different things up here, and being at the city, we are involved in revolving loan funds, and it comes back and it's reinvested. But the key is always to get the investors' money back first. So we would expect that this would be a goal of one per year, and we would love to see them especially in the areas that don't have industrial parks, including the county. There's no reason that we can't have one in the county as long as we have the infrastructure there. So that's what we're here today. We would love to answer questions. We would love direction. We are meeting, as Lisa said, we are going to be looking at one in Baser, and we will have to make a decision if the funding is not available or won't be available, and that's a long ways down the line to look forward. We have to decide on how to handle that. Eventually, you just have to have the money to go around, and you folks know better than anybody that budgets are budgets, and you have to make them, and you have to set priorities.
Just to start off, support the spec building. I mean, I have in the past when I was out in Lansing. But I just got to tell you, folks, this is probably the worst time in the world to be asking us. We just had to, and so I don't want to see negative on my part because I like what I'm seeing out there, and we have to grow, especially if it's going to pay for itself eventually. But we just took $450,000 from Lansing because we couldn't afford to help them with an economic project too. In fact, GBA, I think, was going to design, and I was not happy with that. So whatever we're saying up here is decisions we're going to make, and I don't know what they're going to decide on this. If it doesn't go down the way you want it to right now, doesn't mean it's not going to happen in the future. But we're just getting crushed out here, folks. I mean, with Council on Aging and stuff like that, our money is just, and things that should have been done 15 years ago before these county commissioners on board, bridges and things like that, are just flat killing us. So after saying that, I've worked, got y'all, when I was the mayor in Lansing, and we had a site at one time, decided we were going to go there, and the briefing. I like what I see with it, and I've always liked that. I just don't know with, just speaking for myself, I just don't know with the numbers I've seen. And being a budget manager for years and years, whether I was a police chief or city manager or the mayor, and now up here, the county's got a lot of things to do, and we've got so many roads. I've never seen so many roads in my life. But that's just me speaking right now, so I'll let the other county commissioners speak. Mike?
One question I had was, we have our new economic development director, Tom Cole, and he's been trying to work with the entities, the Port Authority, the LCDC, and then the county, who does what.
Yeah.
And we've developed the incentive plan piece of that so far, and I know he's working on the rest of that strategy. And I don't want to say no to this, but I think it's a little premature when we don't have that strategy, or if you want to call it a comprehensive plan for how we're going to move forward on economic development. As all of us working together, if he gives us his recommendation that this is a piece of it that he thinks should be funded when we get that strategy put together, I think that's one thing. But if we come in right now, when we're kind of in the middle of that process, we're not quite ready. So I guess the question is, if we don't fund this, does this cause something to fall through, or do you have some reserves you could fall back on for now, and then we can,
Sure do.
when we get the plan developed, we can have you come back?
That's an excellent question, and we do have some reserves, and that is the conversation that we do have almost every meeting. I know Commissioner Collins sits in the meetings, and what do we do with it? I mean, it doesn't do any good sitting on the shelf. We do have some consideration for things that might come up that we have to do. But we can fund it. This project, at the specific, it's done, it's up, it's paying taxes. So it's already done, and the request was only to claw back at the back end. So it's behind us. The next one coming up, we don't know that answer. Commissioner, we'll have that conversation. I sure won't vote. I mean, it's not my vote. It's the vote of the board.
Right.
And we'll have that conversation when they present this week or next week. And we don't want it to delay. We should have the funds to fund it. But eventually that goes to zero, or you just don't know.
But what I'm saying is, once we have this kind of put together, what Lisa's role is, what the Port Authority's role is, what the county's role is, then we'll know better what pieces of it that we need to be funding. And right now it seems a little premature, right in the middle, kind of in the middle of that process, to make a decision. But now, if it was like an emergency, we're going to cause this project to not move forward, I think that's different. But if we can all work together, and what I want to see is everybody working together in the same direction, and that's what
we're here for. We're here for that conversation. We're here for that direction, and how do we handle it? And then we will continue to communicate and get you information back. And we want all economic development projects to work.
Right.
We have the same limitations as you have. Those limitations are funds.
Right.
And every city in the county has the same limitations. Trying to identify ones that work are important. I think the mathematics, I mean, it's really important to me as a banker, former banker. I retired.
Once a banker, always a banker.
But the math on it is really important, that it does work and it does pay the bills back. And we feel this one does. The new one, we haven't seen the math on it yet, but we won't bring it. We won't prove that the math doesn't work. and eventually that comes back to us and to the county, and if it's a municipality city, they get that benefit. And I think Leavenworth has signed off on their piece, Dan, if I'm not mistaken, and the expectation really, the only thing missing on that existing Leavenworth building is the final appraisal from the appraiser. The county appraiser, once the county appraiser sets that value, we'll know exactly what the tax is. And so we know we're going to get our money. So, but Commissioner Stephen, totally understand. Thank you.
Doug?
You know, since I've been on this board, I supported giving $5 million to the city of Leavenworth for their part, and give $5 million to the city of Tonganoxie. I've been a big supporter. But I'm going to tell you, when I went and sat and listened to the presentation in the city of Baser that Lisa gave that said that we had promised to give the money and now we've had a change of position, I got a real problem with that. I'm sitting in a room full of people I represent, city council members I work with, and she's telling them my word's no good. So, you know where I stand on it.
I understand that.
Does anybody got a document that said we would pay this?
I don't. I can tell you
Nobody
that,
can find
Smith,
one.
And, one of the...
You got one? I'd like to speak to that.
Yeah, if you got one. Yeah, come with the mic, please, Harlan.
Well, he's coming up. One of the things that we do have to iron out, and we talk clearly about, is you got to have some documentation in this stuff, and you've got to have it hammered out in advance, and you know that.
Well, but I have a problem sitting in a meeting when somebody representing your board or tells me that my word's no good.
And I would have the same issue.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're going to get that resolved. If somebody's got to go back and stand behind the same podium and make that statement clear.
Mr. Russell?
Yeah, Harlan Russell, LCDC. I just want to stand up. I was on the committee with Dan and Brian and Josh Hoppus and a couple of city managers, county manager, when we put that program together. And the one element of that program was that funding mechanism that comes from the cities and the county of how we saw this investment of being a perpetual thing. That once we got the initial funding the very first year, which was in our LCDC budget request, I believe, 2 years ago, and we've been very consistent in asking for roughly $60,000 to fund that project. Mr. Smith, I'll apologize for Lisa. I was in that meeting. I think she picked the wrong word. It was the intent that we understood that the county was on board. So never that you promised the money.
We changed our position was the exact
I'm apologizing on behalf of our director that I think she picked the wrong word.
I apologize for that, Commissioner.
Enough to go back and stand at the same podium and tell them the things you said were not true?
I think that we had every intent to understand that the county was part of the program and we were trying to get the funding in place. I think the things that's important to think about is that from an economic development standpoint, all we do is try to line up tools to make us more competitive in the market against other communities. The community or the business that's in Leavenworth Business Park now, that's the actual funding request today, was a business that was in Lenexa, was looking to relocate. We were fortunate that through this program, as part of our incentive package, we were able to attract them. We do have a second project. We actually believe we had a third and a fourth project, and I believe the Port Authorities told them they're not going to accept applications on those particular projects. We didn't know exactly where they were, but they were projects in the pipeline, what we call the pipeline. The project in Baser is in the pipeline to the point that we understand it's through Baser's Planning Commission, has been approved, and is at this critical funding level. This is a brand new business. I understand that it's a county resident that wants to start this business. Has a significant contract, I understand, with a nationwide type provider to put the business in town. Part of our incentive package was this program, understanding that the city of Baser would step forward with their sales tax portion of that revenue and, along with the funding formula. So it's really about what can we do as a team, and I understand budget, but as much as this guy, and I sat through many of them with that guy, at a smaller level, I'm sure. But I understand budgets looking down, the thing that always surprised me to the city of Lansing is we literally had the budget down to the pencils we bought each year. I mean, it's crazy. And so I get that part of it. But we come and we talk about economic development a lot in this room and in other rooms, and we talk about what are the things that we can do to make Leavenworth County more attractive. You had a couple of gentlemen here from Mark earlier. What makes us look more attractive in Mark's eyes? Us attending those meetings. LCDC has done over the years, tried to do a part to make sure that we identified open seats on those committees and made sure we were filling them with Leavenworth County people. So those are steps in the right direction. This is just a step that we took several years ago. We thought it was an opportunity. We kind of used the term back then, giving mom and pop businesses the opportunity to really come out of their garage or out of their basement and make that significant hurdle into that industrial building. Once we get them in the industrial building and the business flourishes, then the idea is that then we have a building that maybe they vacate, we backfill, and when they vacate that, they do something bigger and better. So we always know in the EDC world that your best business comes from within. You want to build existing business. This is just a program that we firmly believe puts Leavenworth County, gives us a little bit more of a competitive edge against other people. Understanding if the budget's not there this year, but God, we just ask that you guys consider it our priority in the coming years, because right now we're only talking about one or two projects. If this thing's successful and people start seeing that, we're running out of developable property in Tonganoxie in the Urban Hess Park, right? We have had a number of inquiries about property there. Those lot sizes are they fit this type of funding very well on this program. So it's an incentive to help level the playing field.
Harlan, I don't think, I only speak for myself, I don't have a problem with when it being developed and looking down the road. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying right now, since the government printed more money and we're in the times we're in right now, that it'd be really tough for us to do it now. At the same time, you remember well, I supported it when we were in Lansing. Sure. That one fell through because of whatever reason it did. But I was on board with that, and I definitely would entertain personally looking at the ones in the future, because I think when you go from the mom and pop down to the thing, that's exactly what we were trying to get to. So I don't want you to take away from here that this commissioner is thinking that they're not a good idea. It's just, folks, I think as Jeff said one time, it's pouring. I mean, you know, we've got so many issues, that things that should have been taken. I'm not trying to throw anybody to the bus, but before any of these county commissioners were up here, we got bridges that we thought we just have a lot of issues. So it's going to take a time, but the process itself and what you're trying to accomplish, I've always liked. And I'll leave that. That's my comments on it.
It's a vicious double-edged sword.
I know it is. I know it is.
That is frustrating, because the program is designed to bring businesses on the tax rolls. We now have a building. I don't know what the total investment was on what it ended up being, and like Chris said, that when the assessment comes out, we'll know for sure on the new building. But we created jobs in the county.
The estimate on the assessment, you think?
Sorry?
You have an estimate? You think 30-some thousand?
The tax side of it, or the
property tax wise?
It is. Probably have it.
It's in here.
It's on.
So is there any way that part of that tax, once the tax is paid, could go back to the Port Authority, like a
clawback?
Well, we used to
like a clawback, or basically like City of Baker's getting ready to do the 75%.
Well, there's sure there is. There's like
so is there something that we could do to get that money and then give a portion of that back toward it? I mean, it's not going to be a $57,000 payment.
Yeah, there's cities use neighborhood.
Originally it was $50,000, right, Dan? When we were first talking about it. So
cities use.
So you guys changed your position. You want 57 now.
We're
going to talk about changing positions,
commissioners.
Let go ahead first.
The estimated increased assessed value is $347,500. If the building appraised at 1.39 or 1.4 million, I think that was back in 21, so we don't know. But
25%
probably
of that.
It's probably 25%. The 1.3 is the appraised. The assessed is 347.
Right, 25% of that.
So the challenges with these things are, when do you get your payback? And on this particular project, and understand that this is a taxpayer subsidized loan. That's key. It's because we use taxes to fund it. And we give money to the Port Authority every year and continue to. This isn't a request above that amount. I believe there's a tax abatement portion on this project. Is that correct?
60% for 5 years.
60% for 5 years. So our share will be 40% of our normal taxes for 5 years, and then it kicks in fully. And then the loan repayments on this don't start until 2032. Is that correct?
Correct.
So when you have a program that's designed to eventually be self-sustainable, the 2032, when the payments start being made, until then, that's the coverage where the gaps occur that they're looking for us to cover. So it will go on the tax rolls. It'll be at a reduced rate of 40%, which I think, I'm just using their estimates because I don't have that math off the top of my head. It'd be around roughly $5,000 a year in taxes that the county would be collecting for the first portion until the full taxes kicked in, and then it's about $12,000.
Yeah, but I think you'd look at it too. I agree, and sometimes it takes a while to catch it back. You know, a lot of y'all are familiar with cities or neighborization. The developer, and not the taxpayer, but the developer gets back 95 for 10 years. But after that time's complete, all that money goes back to the city. And I can tell you in Lansing, that's why they're able to do some things, because we put that in place 15 years. We just got to make sure that, you know, once some of these things that you're getting fed back, and I think Doug might have been going there with this, is that money that comes back to you so you don't have to come to us every time. And it's not like you should be able to recoup some of that funding that's going out so you can use it for the next project instead of having to come for us for the whole amount all the time. Does that make sense, Chris? What you
sure. No, absolutely.
So, and I always supported that putting a portion of a mill back to Port Authority or economic development. Let's just say a portion of a mill. I believe it used to be that way years and years ago.
Long time ago.
And I think that's something we need to look at.
We need to look at that. I mean, we
put
a portion of a mill toward that, and it just grows and takes care of itself, and you don't have to come in here. Once a year budget.
That's what I think we need to do.
Well, these are the conversations that we want to have.
And we need to have them earlier before budget.
Yeah.
We need to have them after the first of the year.
In the direction of what direction you want us to go. Obviously, the LCDC and LCPA are two different entities.
Right. Mm-hmm. But you need to have them the first of the year, because once we get in our budget, which we're probably going to approve next, it's way too far down the line. If you start doing it before our budget cycle, I think that's what Doug was leading to, then we've got a good idea too from Mark's what's telling us what we're doing. But also, we've got to grow these programs so they can keep complementing each other and not take a stab here and then come back and try to beg for money for better to use. There has to be some way to put that money back in the coffer so you have it available when we have the next one that pops up. And Lumber County's going to continue to grow. I've already seen it in so many years. Just a matter of time, and we have that mechanism. So our conversations with Tom and Mark and the rest of us is something that, first of the year, we need to start having that conversation, folks.
And we put it off every year. We need to do it because, I've watched a mill grow from $500,000 to almost $1 million now. It's $936,000.
Yeah.
So if you have a portion of the mill,
what's that?
62,000 in Tonganoxie from 24 when I started 100 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. So if we identified a portion of a mill, this thing will take care of itself.
Yeah, Lansing's gone to $1 million.
And the real,
5 years ago.
Kind of back to what we said at the beginning is we got Tom back there working on this plan, and maybe all the things here we talked about as far as that type of a program can be part of that. But I think us making a decision like in the middle of the process, I just don't think we're going to be able to. But I think we're all on board with what you're doing.
Jeff, you have anything to say that?
Just pretty much to reiterate what Commissioner Stephen and Smith said, we understand the concept of this project as well as all your projects, and we totally get the end result is to lower people's taxes. That's what your job is, period. And we understand the concept that sometimes you have to spend money to make money. We get that. But that's why we've already put a lot of money into your projects. And so, for that reason, we don't want to see it tripped up at the end over a small amount of funding. But right now, we all have to look at our rainy day funds because of the situation we're in. So,
Understood.
I think we're just asking if, since it is raining right now, if anybody can look at their rainy day phone.
You said pouring.
Yeah, pouring. It's pouring right now. So I think that's where we're at.
Hey, Vicki.
She told me to stop tapping my pen.
He has to listen to it every month.
Yeah, no, she's still not reporting back to us. Anybody else have anything else on this?
I just have one question, and this is for Lisa. LCDC, your board's been thinking about adding a member of the commission onto the executive committee. Has a decision been made on that? I think that's very important to us that we have involvement at that level.
I don't think so.
There was discussion that started at the last executive committee meeting, and they have asked to talk about that again at the next executive committee meeting.
Okay.
So,
Thank you,
yes,
Lisa.
and as we understand, it's a definite taking very seriously that consideration.
Thank you.
Scott, John, you have anything else?
I have a couple things. First of all, Doug, I'm sorry that you had to endure that. I, for the record, will vouch for you anytime. You've been a staunch supporter of economic development in Leavenworth County.
Well, I think I have been.
You have been. And anybody says otherwise, they can ask me, and I'll set them straight.
Okay. Thank you.
As far as the budget is
We're heard loud
concerned,
and clear.
I feel like I'm asking for a glass of water in the middle of a flood. At the same time, this is a long-term project. Floodwaters will recede. The project will survive. We're all on the same team. We're all working together. Partial funding this year, as little as $5,000 or $10,000, with understanding that we'll continue to increase that until we meet the $57,000, would be a reasonable alternative and show the support that the Commission has for this particular program. When we created this back in 2018, it was a new concept. Nobody knew how popular or if it was even going to happen. And in a short period of time, we have 4 prospects, one solid and active, another one that's going to be active, 2 we're probably going to lose because of the issues that we're dealing with. Doesn't mean they won't happen, it's just that it won't be through this program. But we would appreciate any consideration for any amount of money going forward. We understand where you're coming from. It's not easy to make those decisions. Governing is setting priorities. Please keep us in the list. We'd appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
Folks,
very
we
much.
appreciate you coming in, having an open conversation with us.
Any recommendations on funding going forward, like I was talking about a portion of the mill or something? We're willing to listen to that.
We'll work.
Yeah, that's the way to direct it.
Thanks.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate you coming out this morning.
Take care.
Okay. Presentation, we need an executive. You want to do that one, Doug?
I can find it. Anything else before we go in executive session? How many minutes would you like for executive?
15 minutes.
15 minutes? Okay. I move that the board recess for a closed executive meeting for the discussion of pending litigation involving the legal interest of the county as justified by KSA 754319-B2 for consultation with legal counsel for the board, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, and that the board resume open meeting at 10:20 in the meeting room of the board. Present in the executive meeting will be Commissioner Culverson, Cause, Mike Smith, Doug Smith, and Commissioner Stevens, Senior County Counselor David Van Perries, and County Administrator Mark Lawford.
Second. Got a motion and a second. I'm voting aye. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Stevens?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson?
Aye.
Commissioner Cause?
Aye.
All righty.
Let the record show the board has returned to regular session at 10:20. No action was taken. No decisions were made. The subject was limited to the legal interest of the county.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Okay, presentation discussions. I don't have anything to present to the board today, Doug.
No, I don't either. We had the holiday weekend.
Yeah. Mike?
I had another discussion with a township board member down in southern part of the county about fire district this week.
Jed?
Just had Leavenworth City Council meeting last night. Main thing they talked about was Camp Leavenworth. That's coming up in a couple weeks. And their trash service, they're looking at revamping, using maybe bins, polycarts, I think they call them, instead of
that's
just
what
putting the
they are.
bags out on the corner. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Vicki?
Yeah, I've got Port Authority coming up, and then that's about it. And then in 2 weeks or this Friday, I'm going to go with Mark, and we're going to visit with Pat Roberts at a luncheon at Fort Leavenworth. Yeah, he's the guest speaker. He's also going to be the lunch guest at the fort, and so that'll be an interesting thing. And then 2 weeks on Friday, Frank White III, who is the new interim CEO for the Transit Authority, is going to come up to Leavenworth and visit with me and talk about Transit Authority stuff. And then we're going to tour Fort Leavenworth and Richard Allen Cultural Center and have a nice visit and lunch. So
that's excellent. Anything else, Vicki?
Nope, that's it for now.
Mark,
And Port Authority coming up. That's it.
David, okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Aye. Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
Commissioner Colbert.
Did you have additional public comment?
We didn't have any.
Oh, nobody signed
Nobody
up for
signed up for it.
it? Okay. Aye.
And Commissioner Cos.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.